Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Knockout Podcast, episode 50. We've made it to the historic 50th podcast milestone, and as I was saying, literally before we hit the record button, what better way to be greeted than with Leon Edwards' no contest and a Kevin Holland main event, which actually could be quite good. I'm Ben as ever, and I'm joined by Jack. Jack, how are you? How are you doing? How's your week
Yeah,
been?
glad. Pretty good. Glad we've made it to the half century. It's a nice milestone.
It's been
Yeah, I've not
I
been
mean,
too bad.
it has been a while. I feel like when we were in the SU bunker, and it was a bunker. Um,
Yeah,
just previewing the Brazil fight cards, the one before it all went downhill. Charles Oliveira, Kevin Lee. Just thinking, oh, we'll still have events, everything will wash over, and now sort of, well, I don't even know, a year later probably. We're
yeah.
now,
Over a year later now,
yeah, we're
actually. I think.
now here, and it feels as I think everything does at this point in time. It feels simultaneously ages ago, but also last week.
Yeah.
Uh,
Time just hasn't. It's no
yeah,
concept
and
of
yeah,
it,
that was
isn't
that was
it? To be
March
honest.
14th, so just over a year ago it
Yeah.
would have been that we recorded that one, and yeah, we've not seen each other in person ever since. But
No.
um, what a weird world it is. Anyway, less of those trips down memory lane. Yeah, today we are going to have a look over the Edwards Mohammed card, and all the sort of weird and wonderful stuff that happened in that. And then we've got Derek Brunson versus Kevin Holland at sorry about that. Kevin Holland at the weekend. And then as you were saying, another pay-per-view around the corner. Miocic versus Ngannou too. But that's the week after, so we won't get too excited about that. We may as well start with last week, and we'll start well at the main event, although there's not a whole lot to discuss because we didn't exactly have a winner. Leon Edwards, Bilal Muhammad, second round, no contest with an accidental eye poke. I mean, before we get into that, any thoughts on the first round? I mean, it looked like.
Yeah.
I mean, we certainly, one of my fears was we could see a bit of Edwards ring rust. We didn't know how his stamina was going to hold up. Obviously, we didn't see the stamina, be an issue because it was only in the second round when it stopped. But I thought it was an encouraging first round. Although I'm not sure there's a whole lot of conclusions we can draw from that because Bilal Muhammad was probably just easing his way into the fight, knowing that his sort of best rounds were going to be the ones later on.
Yeah. I think kind of Edwards came out. I'd say probably uncharacteristically aggressive, far more aggressive than he probably usually does. So that was interesting. Probably it might be something to do with ring rust, trying to like convince himself like that he's still there, that he's still as good as he ever was. I expect, like, which he probably is, but just like not quite as fresh, not got his eye in yet. So I think he came out aggressive, more like for a thing, probably for himself. Um, but I always think the first round was kind of gonna look a bit like that. Mohammed does grow into a fight, especially I think against Southpaws. Bilal Muhammad, when he fought Jeff Neal, Neal had a lot of success early, but then I think Muhammad did start to kind of like claw his way back into the fight. He only got one round on one of the judges' scorecards, I think the last one, but he does tend to claw his way back in. And with Edwards being out for 2 years and not knowing how he'd go down the stretch, despite Edwards looking good in the first round, it's still not like a. We still don't know how that fight necessarily would have gone. So there obviously is still a lot of unanswered questions to it. Um, so it's interesting. I was surprised that Muhammad was frequently able to turn Edwards like in the clinch and put his back on the cage. Though that was something that like, really surprised me,
Yeah,
to
I
be
did.
honest.
I did make a note of that. It's like Muhammad is not exactly the biggest of welterweights, and I was thinking, in a hypothetical Edwards Usman rematch down the line, that lack of ability to sort of keep himself, you know, his pressure up against Muhammad and being turned was not exactly a promising sign.
Yeah, that was yeah, that did quite surprise me. So that's interesting. But as I said, a kind of like a southpaw double attack against Muhammad was always going to be fairly successful in the first round.
Yeah.
But it was after that we had questions. But then we obviously never got to find that out because of a freakish eye poke. That
Yeah,
I
mean, it was bad, wasn't it?
If you wanna, like, I think having seen like close up pictures, as the thumb, it was the thumb that went into the eye, but Edwards had a closed fist at the time, so it was like he went for a punch, but his thumb just caught Bilal's eye, and it's like, I don't know, like, what can you do in that situation? It's so like, it's so low percentage of that happening that it's just, what are you gonna do? And it was like, you could tell straight away, man, the way that Bilal reacted was like horrific.
Yeah, it was nasty.
It was nasty, yeah. So no, very unfortunate that was.
Yeah, I know there has been plenty of discussion about the gloves, and I think there always are discussions about the gloves, and I think that is definitely something that does need to be discussed sort of more, and probably a solution needs to become a solution does need to arrive in terms of, you know, are they going to try some of these new gloves? You know, some of the stuff that Trevor Whitman was talking about sort of, well, years ago really, but as you say, I think even with the gloves they used, this was not sort of like a John Jones one where he's sort of like, you know, poking at him like that. But this was, as you say, just a freak accident, and one that, well, unfortunately stopped the fight. But yeah, I think I'd agree with you in terms of it was an encouraging first round from Edwards, but difficult to read too much into it. I mean, I know he's been going on in the post fight that he now wants the title shot. I don't really know if that's how it works. Probably did win the first round, but, you know, I would be intrigued to see how that'll play out. Obviously, we've now got a date for Usman Masvidal 2, which is a lot earlier than we thought. I think a lot of people thought they would be filming sort of for TUF, and so that might happen sort of further down the line into sort of late summer. But I think that's happening at 261 or 262.
Yeah,
so,
which is like mid-April.
Yeah,
it's just a month away.
So that you know, is encouraging in terms of we might get. I think we all probably think Usman will get past Masvidal again, and then, you know, would give Edwards a chance. But I wonder whether there's a need for either him to run it back with Muhammad, although I don't know what the timeline is for Muhammad's eye, or perhaps another fight out there, whether that's a Covington or a Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. I don't know, but I'd be shocked if this is, you know, especially given that all Edwards has had to go through to get, you know, a fight. I'd be surprised if they took this round and a bit as big enough to get himself the next shot against Usman.
Yeah, I don't think they'll give him a title shot after this. And to be honest, I think he should run it back with Bilal, to be honest. Like, there are still questions about that fight, and although it was like a late notice fight, and you'd be like, I would also be fine with kind of like a Covington or a Wonderboy fight as well. I think they're interesting too. So like, they're the three matchups.
Or Gilbert Burns. That's another one they could do.
That's true. I'd pick like one of those for him.
Yeah.
But that being said, and like, I don't think he should necessarily have a title shot straight away. But that being said, I do think he's more deserving of a title shot than Masvidal is. But they've gone with Masvidal anyway.
Yeah, I think to be fair, it would be interesting to have seen what they'd have done with Usman had Usman not called out Masvidal.
Maybe, yeah.
I think, to be honest, for Usman's sake, I think it's quite a clever move because it's probably his easiest fight out of the fights he could have in terms of credible contenders. There is an argument that, you know, okay, he did come in on a week's notice and you can run it back in that sense, but also it's probably his best paid fight. So for him, it's, you know, a fight that has a story going into it, probably is going to get him the most amount of money, and is probably his easiest fight out of that sort of cohort of contenders at welterweight. But
it's a very winnable. Like, we've seen it, like, and the kind of how the first fight went, I'm just not convinced at all that Masvidal will do necessarily any better on a full camp, to be honest.
Yeah,
I don't see what difference the full camp would make in that. Like, obviously other fights it makes a difference, but just like the stylistic matchup, it just seemed like a bad one for Masvidal, that he can maybe do slightly better with a full camp and adjust some and come up with some new weapons maybe, or specific adaptations. But overall, I think the shape of the fight will play out very similar, to be honest.
No, I'd agree. But yeah, we'll see what happens there. But obviously, disappointing because Edwards has waited so long to get in the octagon, and it ends in such a weird style. But we'll move on past that. I mean, the next two, there's not really a whole lot to talk about. Ryan Spann, Misha Serkinov, and Dan Ige, Gavin Tucker, lasting sort of combined total of 1.5 minutes. I mean, the Spann one, literally the first couple of punches thrown, and I mean, though, to be fair, good composure from Spann to finish the fight, but nothing too interesting there. And then Dan Ige, Gavin Tucker, which I was really looking forward to as a good sort of main card featherweight fight, just ended with the first couple of shots.
I think it was literally the first punch from what I can remember. It was weird. And then DC was like talking about, it was 3 seconds or something, despite it lasted 20 seconds. I had no clue what he was going on about. There's been a 20-second before that, DC. Yeah. Weird commentary.
But yeah, good performance from Ige. I mean, you can't really take too much away from it, or great to have a 22-second knockout on your resume. But good for him, I guess, to keep his name sort of facing upwards. I think Gavin Tucker was someone below him. I don't know whether Gavin Tucker's ranked, but certainly he can now be setting his eyes on getting himself back into the upper echelons of the division. Davy Grant, Jonathan Martinez. I didn't realise Davy Grant is a Durham boy.
Yeah, he's a local boy.
I was like, well, I saw the flag come up, and I was like, oh, where's he from? And it's like Bishop's Auckland. I was like, around the blooming corner. I mean, nasty. I mean, Jonathan Martinez came in with a lot of promise. Good performance against Thomas Almeida in the one previously, and I think it's fair. This was the first time I've seen. No, actually, second time. I saw him against Martin Day. A lot of things to be, to like about David Grant. Good sort of stance switching. Some of his striking was a bit sort of unconventional, I thought, and I think the knockout was quite sort of. It was like a very sort of windmilly right body shot, and then coming over the top with like a really big hook, but did the job, and I mean, knocked Jonathan Martinez spark out.
No, Davy Grant's actually he's interesting. Like, obviously, he's not the most kind of technically proficient in a way. As you said, the hooks are a bit unconventional. They're not like the most tight mechanically. But he kind of, I think he's kind of aware of like who he is as a fighter in a sense. Like, he is a brawler, but he's got good attributes for being a brawler in that sense. He makes it work for himself. He's got a very good chin, good recovery, powerful, and like he mixes up his shots fairly well. Like, as you said, he set up like the knockout with the body shot first. So I think that it being like, I just like quite enjoy him as a fighter. I think this might be the first I've seen of him. I don't know if I watched his previous fight.
Yeah, I was having a look. He's actually, I mean, albeit in 2016, he's got a win over Marlon Vera, which is his first one in the UFC.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I went back and watched his Martin Day one retrospectively, but this was certainly the first one I'd seen sort of live. And I thought it was a good first impression. As you say, I think technically he does some interesting stuff, but perhaps not. Everything's a bit sort of not as sort of tight and as textbook as perhaps some other people, but I think there was a lot of things to like, and especially against a guy like Martinez who came in with a bit of promise.
Yeah, Martinez looked good as well. Like, he low kicked him quite well. I remember early on, he was getting that to work for him. But yeah, as I said, Grant, very good recovery, and kind of like built himself into the fight. And also just like from the post-fight interviews and stuff, he just seems like a good dude as well. Yeah. Seems real nice. So yeah, I was really happy for him. He's from Durham. So yeah, no, good lad. I like him.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on him. Elsewhere on the card, Mateus Nikolau, Manel Cape, or Cape, how you say it, Cape. Quick turnaround from him after his fight against Pantoja. Probably on the unluckier end of this decision. I think MMA decisions, which is always quite good in terms of it has a lot of the journalists, although journalists aren't always right. I think there wasn't any 29, 28s for Nikolau, but as I think we said in his fight against Pantoja, I think he won, but again, so inactive in that first round and for large parts of that third round, especially when he knows he's lost the first round, which just be more active. You're about he's a flyweight. He doesn't exactly look like he's big. He's not massive at the weight, so he's not got like a stamina problem. So I just don't see why he's like so inactive for so long spouts of this fight, because when he's actually going forward and throwing a hell of a lot, like in the second round and for the second half of the third round, he's clearly the better striker, but he just doesn't allow himself to get up on the judges' scorecards and just makes everything an uphill battle.
Yeah, I think that I definitely think Cape won, although the third round was close.
I think it's closer than people were saying.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. It's like it was a close round, but I think Cape was kind of a somewhat definitive winner of it, because like he clearly really hurt Nikolau towards the end of the third, and like whatever Nikolau was winning up until like the last essentially 30 seconds or something, it is like in the criteria, and I do think it's fair that like when you hurt someone as badly as I think Cape did hurt him, like he landed, I think, a flying knee to the head and then a really solid knee to the body or something as well, like really badly hurt Nikolau. I think that third round should definitely swing in Cape's favor. But yeah, as you said, the first round he was like, and then large portions of the third, just so inactive. Like in the second, he looked like, I actually really liked him. He looked really good. He started to pressure Nikolau a lot more and started to have a lot more success. And like, yeah, he ripped the body well, feinting with the lead hand and hooking off of that. And then, yeah, and kind of like just built himself back into the second round and was like started to look good there, but then it all dropped off like at the start of the third. And it's like, I don't know what you do. Like for a fighter in that situation, like, is it like, I don't know, it shouldn't be a stamina thing. Like, yeah, he's a flyweight who, like, if it is a stamina thing at flyweight, he's not going to be looking good when if he ever gets to like championship caliber and he goes into 5-round fights, because other flyweights just don't tire. So like, I don't think it's a stamina thing. So I think it must be a mental thing.
Yeah, he doesn't look tired. It's like I don't know. It is weird because like he's not. In that second round, he showed he's not. He doesn't need to be the guy to throw second. When he leads the fight in that second round, it was far better. So it's not even like he's trying to draw out counters. And even if he does think his best work can be done on the counter, you still need to draw out those shots from your opponent to allow you to counter. And it's just I don't know, bizarre. I feel like for someone who's got the experience that he's got, in sort of MMA and then also sort of more broadly in his martial arts career, it's just very bizarre that this is still an issue.
Yeah. So yeah, that's weird. Like, because he has been a guy that's come in with like a decent amount of hype. So it's just quite disappointing that he hasn't been able to put it together yet, because you see in short bursts that he is very encouraging. So I don't know. It's just a bit disappointing, even though I do think he did win this fight.
Yeah.
But what are you going to do? Hopefully, like, he's on a 2-fight losing streak now. If he loses his next one, which hopefully he doesn't, then like he's at risk of being cut, which would just be so disappointing.
We'll see. I mean, I'm hopeful that this last sort of 6 months for the flyweights has hopefully reinforced in Dana White's eyes that is not a division to cut. There are divisions to cut, believe you me, women's featherweight, but flyweight, I think we've seen with, Manal Cape is an exciting fighter if he can get going, and we've seen in Royval Moreno, Royval Cara France, the Figueiredo fights with Benavidez and then with Moreno, that there's so much talent in this flyweight division, and I hope, like, touch wood, this sort of Cape signing and the slow re-burgeoning of the flyweight division will happen over sort of the next year, because I think there is a hell of a lot of talent at the men's sort of 125 in that division that I think still needs to be tapped into.
Yeah, it's a shame. Like, I do think the last 6 months probably has done a lot for it, particularly the Moreno Figueiredo fight. Like, that was, I mean, I think it was probably possibly my fight of the year. I can't remember what we said.
Certainly the male
episode.
fight of the year, you'd probably say.
Yeah. Oh, and Figueiredo, yeah, fighter of the year as well. So, like, I think that has, but it's just a shame that that's come after they got rid of Mighty Mouse. They effectively gutted the division. They got rid of so many fights. I think they got rid of, I can't remember his name, but don't worry. They got rid of like a lot of like top 10, top 15 level fighters from the flyweight division. So I don't know. It's just bizarre that kind of like that's what they chose to do. But now I am glad it is kind of coming back in, and maybe they can sign back some of the people that they lost when they cut them all.
Let's hope so.
Moving on. Ortiz, that's who I was most.
Yeah, he's good. Yeah, get him back. Where's he at now? Is it Bellator?
I don't know. He might be. I don't know. He hasn't fought since the Joseph Benavidez fight, which was a very fun fight in its own right. And yeah, like, he was on a 3-fight winning streak, lost to Benavidez, who then went on to fight for a title, and he got cut. And it's like, I have no idea why they just gutted the division. Very annoying, but there we go.
That's just Dana White for you. I guess the final stop on our main card tour is Eric Anders, Darren Stewart, which again, another no contest. I mean, there's been some discussion in terms of what's the difference between this one and the Yan one. This was given as a no contest rather than a DQ. I mean, I think for Darren Stewart, he was getting pretty handedly pieced up in this fight.
Yeah.
So I'm not, I'm not too sure he'll be too disappointed with the way this turned out. Although I'm sure he looked like he wanted to continue. A weird one, because I think at the time I was like, yeah, no contest probably makes sense, but equally I'm not. Although there perhaps wasn't the same intent behind Anders' knee as there was in Jan's in terms of the sort of ferocity of it and its effectiveness in connecting with the opponent's head. There is, to all intents and purposes, not really a difference between them.
Yeah.
Because you can't say sort of knee slipped and he and hit him in the head. He did throw that shot to hit him deliberately and got it wrong.
Yeah, I'd actually have to like. I probably should have gone back and watched this again. But I think the Anders one was in kind of what was essentially a finishing sequence, and very possibly the fight could have been stopped. And unlike in the Yan one, there was a big, like, long period where it was clear, where, like, no one was throwing any punches. Yan wasn't throwing punches, wasn't doing anything. Just had his hand on, like, Sterling's head. Sterling wasn't trying to get up. And it was clear to everyone involved that Sterling was down at that point. And then, like, Yan paused, threw the knee. Like, you can't get more deliberate than that. Whereas in the Anders one, like, it was part of a finishing sequence where he was throwing punches, Stewart was moving, and then he threw the knee. So it's like, it was less clear, kind of, that Stewart was downed, I suppose. And it was kind of like Anders was more in a flurry instead of, like, it was just one singular shot that he threw, whereas Jan's was just one singular deliberately placed shot, whereas Anders was more. So I don't know. It's a difficult one to judge. I can understand why people might want this to also be a DQ. But I think that a no contest is also defensible as well. Whereas Jan's, I think, is no doubt a disqualification.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'd agree with that.
yeah, it is like weird, kind of like where the line is drawn, but I do think there is a bit of a difference between the two cases.
Yeah, interesting one. I think there's certainly perhaps some room for clarification. Anyway, moving on. I mean, that is the main card on the prelims. Jack, you watched the Angela Hill fight. I'll elsewhere. I mean, I'll just quickly wrap up some of the ones I watched. I mean, Hack Prass looked good against Rafa Garcia, although Garcia looked good. Honey Yaya looking as good as ever, but I'm not sure who Ray Rodriguez was. And then Charles Jourdain, Marcelo Rojo. I always say it when Jourdain fights, he's always one to watch. This wasn't the fight of the night purely because they didn't give a fight of the night, but it was, for all intents and purposes, a really great fight and one that Rojo actually looked really good in himself. Jack, have you got anything you want to add for the Angie Hill fight? Seemed like a pretty regulation victory, like we sort of thought.
Yeah, Angela Hill just battered her, to be honest. I think that
Analysis.
it got scored 30-27 across the board. I can't remember which round it was. I think it was either the second or the third. I thought it was a 10-8.
I think it might have been the second, yeah.
Angela Hill just came out, looked really just looked really sharp, like kind of like fainted her out, countered her over the top, and then once she got into the clinch was like fairly just brutal. The only like criticism would be that she did get carried away, I think, trying to finish Yoda, which allowed Yoda to get some takedowns that she necessarily shouldn't have given up. But that was because like she threw about 7 knees in a row and like to just try and get her out of it. But no, good performance from Hill. And yeah, I really enjoyed which I do enjoy pretty much every Angela Hill fight. She's probably my favorite female fighter. So yeah, good fun.
Good stuff. And yeah, a good win for her. Certainly gets herself back, hopefully, in the mix with some of the other top strawweights. Well, that was that fight card. A weird fight card, but also some good stuff on there. We will move then for the second part to talk about Brunson Holland coming up at the weekend. I mean, and there's not a whole plethora of fights on here to get overly excited about. Leonardo Santos, Grant Dawson, as I was talking to you, Jack, before we came on, seems like a fun one. Santos, who is still technically, I think, unbeaten in the UFC. Unbeaten since he's been there in 2014, but I know 2013 even, but has had sort of lots of spells out. And Grant Dawson, who I think has finally decided to move up to lightweight after all his sort of 150 catch weight bouts. So we'll see what happens there, but that'll be a fun one with sort of Grant Dawson's wrestling and Santos's BJJ skills. Anything else on the card outside of sort of maybe the main two that you're looking at?
I've said Max Griffin's always a fairly fun fight. Brings a very high pace and is very kind of like tough and scrappy, even in times where he's getting beaten up. Like the Cowboy Oliveira fight was quite a brutal fight, but good fun. So yeah, Max Griffin's I enjoy Max Griffin fight. So watch that one. But outside of that, it is just the top two fights pretty much.
Yeah, well, maybe we'll start with the co-main, work our way up. Gregor Gillespie, Brad Riddell. Gillespie coming back for the first time in a long time. First time since November 2019. After that, nasty to use to put it lightly, really. KO at the hands of Kevin Lee. I mean, one and done, brutal stuff. He comes back to fight Brad Riddell, who is 3-0 now, I think. Yeah, 3-0 in the UFC. Alex De Silva being his last victory. I mean, this is really the age-old wrestler versus kickboxer, and I think when I was having a look at some of the stuff in the lead up, my one point of concern was Brad Riddell's 3 fights in the UFC, which have seen a combined 14 takedowns on his part, in terms of 14 times he's been taken down. Obviously, a lot of them have been him sort of popping back up, but I'm not sure that sets a particularly promising precedent against a guy like Gillespie, where it feels more like if he gets you down, you're not getting up as easily as perhaps in some of his other fights.
Yeah, I think a lot of that probably is that. I mean, he has fought like good wrestlers. To be fair to Brad Riddell, like Magomed Mustafayev is not the level of wrestler say that Gillespie is, but he is very powerful. It's like he has fought like a string of fairly decent wrestlers. But I also think that I think you are right when you say that if Gillespie gets him down, it's not going to be as easy to get back up as it is for his other fights. And I also think that kind of Riddell's style kind of puts him in position to get taken down a lot. In the Kevin Lee fight, Gillespie couldn't get the takedown. I think obviously because Kevin Lee's a very good grappler in his own right, very good wrestler, and he was able to deny the shots. But he was also able to do that because they fought a very long range, like jabbing battle, essentially for as long as the fight lasted. And Kevin Lee, who has freakishly long arms, was able to do good work in that. Although Gillespie did look fairly good, like use his own jab fairly successfully until he got countered from it. But what can do? But whereas Riddell's style is very much kind of about getting his way into the pocket to kind of unleash combos on his opponent, essentially. Like he does that very well. He's very good at it, but it does mean that he will almost always be in range for an opponent that wants to duck in onto his hips. And Greg Gillespie is a good shot takedown artist, but also a very good chain wrestler as well. So even if he is unsuccessful with the first shot, which Riddell has fairly good takedown defense, to be honest, so he might be. I think just the way that Gillespie kind of changes wrestling together will be too much for Riddell, to be honest. And as you said, once Gillespie gets him down, I think that it will be difficult for Riddell. Not like I think he can like do some work and maybe get up and then get back to the striking, but I think then that it will put in a kind of sense of urgency in Riddell that maybe means that he can't quite be at his best when it gets back to the feet. I don't think that Gillespie will finish him. I think Riddell's tough, and I don't think
he's not a brutal, ground and pound specialist on the ground. He's happy to sort of stay busy, but not be sort of,
And he like, to be honest, like we're saying that, like all apart from one of his wins in the UFC are finishes.
Yeah,
like,
I guess.
Even given that, he doesn't feel like too much of like that much of a finishing threat. I suppose that most of his wins are he kind of does break his opponent down over time.
Yeah, I guess it's more of like a grindy TKO rather than like a an all action offensive when he's sort of on the ground.
Yeah, and I think that Brad Riddell will be able to resist that. So I don't see a finish. So it will be interesting. Like I think this fight will probably go the distance. So we'll have plenty of time to see how they both look and how they both react to each other. But I think this is a really kind of like who's going to go on to like the upper echelon like of the division. So I'm actually really interested in this fight because I think it's you'll see like a splitting in the paths, I suppose, of their two careers in a way. So yeah, it's a really interesting fight this for me.
Yeah, it'll be a good one to see how it goes. But yeah, I think I'd probably lie with Gillespie a bit more. Although I think as I heard someone say, if Riddell can, stuff a few and keep it on the feet for a good part of the round, it'll be interesting to see how that goes. Because although we mentioned Gillespie's coming back from a loss, that was it wasn't one that he was sort of pieced up for 3 rounds and eventually knocked out. It was one shot.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how
Gillespie was being like it was competitive with Kevin Lee, who's not like the best striker. He's not on Riddell's level in terms of a striker, but Gillespie managed to get his jab going at least, and then as you said, Kevin Lee kind of countered him and then head kicked him for a brutal finish. But Gillespie is, one thing I'd say, is fairly vulnerable defensively, I suppose. So I think Riddell can, especially over time, probably, if he gets the chance, work those openings a little bit. Riddell's good at that, kind of building off his opponent's weaknesses. So I think that'll be interesting. And Riddell does keep a fairly low stance, I suppose, as well. He's got the kind of like the classic City kickboxing, like very kind of ducking, like up and down kind of movement thing that you see from like Kai Kara France and Alex and Volkanovski. So it'll be interesting. I am really intrigued by this fight, I suppose. So
yeah, there's certainly a lot to like. Moving on then to the main event, Derek Brunson, Kevin Holland. Bizarrely, and I think this is a first for a Derek Brunson fight. I come into this with a bit of interest, which sounds bizarre when I'm not exactly a big fan of Kevin Holland, and Derek Brunson is, well, Derek Brunson. But that Shabazian fight for Brunson was a good performance. He is 3-0 since that move down to Sanford MMA with the likes of Robbie Lawler and Gilbert Burns and formerly Kamaru Usman. I mean, the Ian Heinisch fight and Elias Theodorou fight will not stick firmly in my memory, but certainly in the Shabazian fight, which I watched yesterday, there was a marked improvement in terms of the composure and I think the sort of finally Brunson understanding that nowadays you can't just charge in for the takedown, because most people will see that coming and will piece you together like he was, like
Adesanya.
Yeah, like Adesanya did, and others before that. I think there was a bit more composure and a bit more feinting of the takedown by using some of his stand-up and not sort of charging in recklessly. So I think there certainly is elements to Brunson which have improved. And then for Holland, I mean, I just don't really know. I feel like when we were previewing the Jacare fight, I was like, finally, we'll get to see where Holland is, because this sort of his COVID run, if you like, has been great. And Darren Stewart's a good win, but we never really saw sort of where his level was, because a lot of them were sort of last minute fights. And the Jacare fight was the first one we could say, okay, let's see how he gets on against a guy that is maybe not at his best, but certainly a very respected guy in the division. And it just ended in such bizarre circumstances that it's difficult to take anything away. Then Holland is just a bizarre, unconventional madman. And I don't really know if my opinion has changed too much since then, to be honest.
Yeah. Looking back on it, like, I do agree with your points on Derek Brunson. He's gone through like a few kind of stylistic evolutions, I suppose, throughout his kind of career in the UFC. He did go from a guy that really was more trying to kind of like, take you down, hold you against the fence, to an absolute madman. And now he's kind of managed to synthesize the two into somewhat of a effective style. So I think that is good for him. But what I can't believe, like going back to what we were talking about at the start, like I can't believe that Shabazian fight was the start of August. That seems like that was the back half of last year for me, maybe even early this year. Like, that's insane. Anyway, moving on from that, and on to Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland is one of the fighters that I just cannot predict at all. Like, he's one of the most unpredictable fighters for me. I just have no clue what he's going to do or what he's going to be like in a way. Like the Jacare fight, as you said, we thought we could learn about something about Holland and like how he reacts to this kind of like particular threat in Jacare. But actually, it turns out that he comes out, gets taken down immediately, essentially, gets back up, gets taken down again. Essentially, is fighting the worst possible fight that you could think to fight against Jacare, and then just absolutely knocks him out. And like, what are you going to do? It's the weirdest knockout probably I've ever seen. So I don't know, like, what do you say? Like, it's not a replicable game plan, but I suppose it does show he's powerful.
Yeah, I mean, I watched back the Stewart fight because I think that was 15 minutes.
Yeah,
I mean, obviously he's a a long fighter, very sort of long at the weight, good kicks. Obviously, he's got power, as we saw with his knockout of Joaquin Buckley, and that, as you say, that meme knockout, which I think it really is of Jacare. My thing is with Holland, and I don't know whether that's just sort of how I see Kevin Holland, or perhaps how he is, and I wonder whether this will change. Is there doesn't seem to be an I'm not even sure it's ability, but a willingness to impart a game plan in the sense of keeping the fight where he is best. I remember very, very vividly as I was watching the Holland Stewart fight back yesterday. In between the first and the second round, Kevin Holland turns to his corner just before the second round starts, saying, "Oh, I'd like to do some more striking." It's like, well, do that then. Keep the fight at range. You're a big fighter. He's tall. He's long at the weight. And as a Darren Stewart, who's not a huge middleweight in terms of size, in terms of height rather, just getting in the clinch, taking him down. I mean, the third round between Stewart and Holland could have almost been a 10-8. And Stewart's no sort of wrestling prodigy, or certainly not got huge strengths in that area, and certainly took Holland down easily, which I think is certainly a problem. But I don't know whether it's just Holland's character or his style. He's just there doesn't seem to be a capability or a willingness to try and fight in the places that he is strongest, and he just seems he's willing to just sort of like brawl and fight it out wherever the fight goes. And I feel like as you make your way up the division, you can't just rely on sort of memey knockouts and sort of fluky knockouts, because someone like Brunson, which could happen, can just take you down to the ground and just ground and pound you for 5 rounds. So I don't know. I mean, I'd like to think that with a full training camp like he's got, he's game planned more, and there is perhaps this acceptance from him that up against some of these better guys, you've got to be more sort of tactically focused and willing to ensure that your fight, as you always say, you're taking the path of least resistance. But I just don't know if he's that way inclined to actually do that.
I think it's interesting. I think it's one of those situations where a fighter's personality really does kind of shine through in the way that they fight. Like, Holland's he seems like a very kind of easygoing, kind of relaxed guy, I suppose. And that kind of shows in that he's fairly content to let the kind of fight go. Yeah, sometimes where his opponent just wants to take it, and he was just like, yeah, I'll go with it. I'll roll with this. I'll do my work from wherever you want to do it. So yeah, I think in that regard, that is something that he does need to kind of improve on. That does have an upside, I suppose, in he does stay very relaxed. He's never one to kind of get freaked out, which if you kind of contrast him to his opponent, to Brunson, throughout his career has historically been someone that has been able to get freaked out. Look back to the Adesanya fight. Brunson was not comfortable in that first round. He was just charging like a madman because he didn't know what to do, and he didn't want to kind of settle down into a normal fight with Adesanya because he was kind of shook. Whereas that will not happen to Kevin Holland. He will never get shaken. And I think that also kind of allows him to have, I suppose, longevity within a fight, because he's not going to he will always try and recover, I suppose. He'll never kind of think, oh, I'm getting beaten here, and kind of fold. So it has its positives, but as you said, also its negatives in terms of he is content to let his opponent dictate where the fight goes. So yeah, I think it would serve Holland really well to kind of just really consistently get his jab in Brunson's face and really kind of make that the key to build his like game plan around in this fight. Whether or not he can do that, I don't know. But I think it will certainly be interesting. And if he can do that, I think he can build off of that and probably get the finish because Brunson's not too durable.
Yeah, I was literally just looking at his Wikipedia page, and before his most recent 3-fight run, which have all gone into the third round, albeit the Shabazian one didn't last much into that third round. He's had 14 UFC fights prior to his sort of last 3, and only 4 of them have got out of the first round. So that's been a lot of wins, but also some losses. I mean, again, you look at his loss column, and it's Adesanya, Jacare, the Anderson Silva one, which wasn't really a loss, and Whitaker and Romero. So he's not losing to bad people in the middleweight division.
He's not losing to scrubs.
So, but yeah, I definitely think Holland's got the tools to beat Brunson. I just wonder whether he will actually use those tools, because, as you say, for all I say in terms of Brunson's calmer approach and getting in, he's no wizard on the feet, and he's getting in to range against Shabazian wasn't exactly made that difficult by Shabazian. But if Holland can use his natural advantages on the stand-up and his raw physical size and his length, I think there is a really good opportunity for him to get the job done, whether that's knockout probably, or by some sort of decision. But as you said, and as I said, it's just, is he content to actually stick to a game plan? Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. But that's just one of the things, one of those sort of intangibles that we don't really know, to be honest.
Yeah, I'd completely agree with that. It'll be interesting. And Kevin Holland's always fun. Like, the amount he talks to his opponents. And does this one have a crowd? I can't remember. I don't think it does.
I think it's one of the ones coming. I think it might be the Masvidal Usman fight. I think they're targeting a crowd in Texas or Florida, I want to say.
Such a terrible decision.
I mean, we can agree on that.
But outside of that, I think this has no crowd, which is fun, because then we'll get to hear Kevin Holland in all his glory, who really is made for no crowd events, to be honest. Yeah. It's brilliant. Like, just, he was having a full-on conversation with Jacare, which, like, obviously that's like a bit, it is like kind of just for the fun, but to a certain degree, I think it did put Jacare off.
Yeah, I mean, he stopped punching to laugh.
Yeah, like, I think, and it feels like it shouldn't work, but like, I think it might have been Frank Shamrock said this about when he fought Nick Diaz. It was like, he's punching you and he's talking to you so much that you can't believe that he's saying what he's saying as he's saying it. That it, like, and Frank Shamrock was like, it really did kind of put him off when he was fighting Nick Diaz. And Kevin Holland is like that. Like, I could imagine Jacare, who's probably used to opponents being so respectful to him because he's Jacare, that, like, this guy just coming out and just talking so much just won't shut up. You're just like, what is this? Like, what are we doing here? It's interesting.
I remember a bizarre reference. One of the TV shows my girlfriend likes to watch is Fresh Meat, and there is like a fight scene in that, and one of the tips, again, awful analogy, but one of the tips this guy who's like this like nerdy like geology student gets is like, distract your opponent, and he's getting beaten up, and he's yelling, what color's the number 9? And the guy being honest, like, what? And he just like, it is sort of like that. It's like, if he's yelling, I think it was in the Thiago Santos fight, which is his first fight. He was getting beaten up, and Thiago Santos like joke said, how much more can you take? He's like, I can take this all day. Santos just stopped punching him. So it works.
Yeah, so like, it is a weird thing, but no, it really, like, it's interesting. Fighting Kevin Holland must be an experience that you just like, it's difficult to prepare for mentally, I suppose. So yeah, no, it'll be good fun. Like, he always kind of makes me laugh when I watch him fight. So I'll be interested in it.
Yeah, no, definitely be one to look forward to talking about next week. Well, unless you've got anything else you need to mention.
No, I think we covered everything. We covered what
Yeah,
Masvidal, Usman being booked, and that's bad. I think
yeah,
outside of that, there's nothing else that I can think of.
yeah. Well, yeah, we'll wrap this episode. Well, wrap this episode to a close. Bring this episode to a close, rather. Yeah. Thank you all for listening. We'll be back next week to talk about all the action from the Holland Brunson card, and we've got feels like only a week ago we had UFC 259. We've now got UFC 260, headlined by Miocic and Ngannou with Volkanovski Ortega, Woodley Vincente Luque, which could be interesting. Sean O'Malley, Thomas Almeida, who we actually mentioned a bit. There's a Nurmagomedov on the card. Camel Worthy. There's a few guys to talk about, but we'll save that for next week. But thank you everyone for listening. Stay safe as ever, and we'll see you then.
See ya.